Hello, and welcome to Grapple with the Past, a new Playing with Power podcast mini-series where I, or Ryan, or other Playing with Power members will be joined by our latest Masterpieces series guest to talk about their deck, the game, how it went, and now, whenever we're going to be having these conversations, now that we're a month or so removed from the initial recording, what they would have done differently with their deck, what they wish they might have done differently on the podcast, on the gameplay episode. But first, of course, we need to pay the bills. Tickets for our latest Mox Masters tournament are on sale now. Compete for $2,000 in prizes and points towards our invitational coming this October. Tickets sell out for each event, so pick up yours today. Our merchandise is available in our store. We currently have dice and coins emblazoned with the Playing with Power logo. And of course, the coin also has our classic KO graphic on the back for when you take that 3 damage from Mana Crypt. So go and grab those at playingwithpowermtg.com today and help support the channel. You can also support us on Patreon. Patrons get access to our Discord, webcam league, play days, early access to videos, names in the credits of the show, exclusive videos, the opportunity to watch our gameplay recordings live, and even the ability to be on an episode. Of course, past this episode, future episodes of Grapple with the Past will also most likely be Patreon exclusive. Some of those we're going to bring out in front of the curtain, but the vast majority of them are going to be for our Patreon subscribers only. There are tiers for everyone, so go to patreon.com/playingwithpowermtg and help support the show today. As always, if you're looking to sponsor the podcast, please reach out to Ryan's email below. On today's very first episode of Grapple with the Past, I am joined by Alana, then our guest, now a fellow Playing with Power member, to talk about her time on Masterpieces Episode 3, in which she played Zur the Enchanter. Alana, thank you for joining me for this conversation about Masterpieces Episode 1. Your Episode 1, your Masterpieces episode.
It was
Masterpieces Episode 3.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was great to have you. It was very funny to have you on when we all kind of knew we were going to be hiring you for the Playing with Power team, but you didn't technically know that yet.
And kind of sure, but not really. We'll see. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So that is the funny thing. We just recorded an episode with Zeb actually, but Zeb knew that he was a member of the team and all that. So it's just like, hey, I'm Zeb, a member of Playing with Power. So it was funny to put out this episode where you're like, hi, I'm Alana. I play CEDH. I like tournaments, and we couldn't really cut in the and now I'm a member of Playing with Power. Yeah. But on this episode, which you joined us with, we were kind of like, Alana, bring something a little bit different because we all want to play meta decks. It's the guest's turn. It's the guest's turn to play something a little funky.
I mean, obviously, like I would always play the best stuff to get practice on and for tournaments. So every so often I'll be like, oh, I want to play something random and spicy, but it doesn't happen always.
Yeah, but how did you end up playing Zur the Enchanter in the first place? We were like, all right, do you have like a more spicy deck? You're like, yeah, I've actually been thinking about Zur recently.
So I'm older, but like I'm in Magic terms a Zoomer, right? Because I learned Magic later in life, and everyone always talk about, oh, Zur is so cool and so good, and blah blah blah. And like it does this cool shimmer thing, and I was like, I do like shimmer. I think the shimmer effects are cool. Like doing stuff at instant speed is always fun. And so I was like, okay, well, I didn't play back when Zur was a thing, so let's try it and see like what's going on.
Yeah, of course. And for those of you who are listening who didn't play Magic the Gathering back in like 2016 or whatever, when Zur the Enchanter was a great Magic the Gathering deck, he's an Esper 4-drop. He's a 1/4 with flying, and whenever he attacks, you can search your library for an enchantment card with mana cost 3 or less and put it onto the battlefield and shuffle your library. Usually that means Necropotence or Rhystic Study. Yeah. Almost always Necropotence if you're trying to win. Alana, how does the Zur deck actually usually win?
I know that there's a few different ways in the list that I played on Masterpieces. There's the Aether Flux route. So obviously, if you're allowed to, you have enough mana to hold priority on a bunch of your spells, you can gain a lot of life really quickly and shoot everybody. But it kind of requires you to play these bad cards that like don't really do anything else. Like if you can't just flash in all your artifacts, you have to like run Retract or Heichel's Recall and bounce them all and then play them again, and then it's kind of clunky. Otherwise, it's just normal Esper wins, Batman, Oracle, stuff like that. So.
Yeah, because like the whole idea is pretty much you like draw a bunch of cards off of Necropotence, which obviously you don't get into your end step, and then you like cast Shimmer Mirror to give all your artifact cards flash, or now obviously there's Liberator's Urza's Battlethopter, which is a vehicle.
Yeah,
It's just a creature that does the exact same thing.
It's like the classic like cards for mana, mana for cards, cards for mana paradigm. And like I first thought about it when I was like, oh, they printed Liberator. Like, okay, we have a duplicate Shimmer effect. Is it like more? Is it better because of that? And the answer ended up being no, because the problem isn't actually like the consistency of the Necro, because the Necro is actually hilariously consistent. If you get to put Necro down and -30, like you basically 90%, 90% chance to win. Like
drawing 30 cards is really good. But okay, attention everyone. This is spoilers. If you haven't seen Masterpieces episode 3 yet, you should probably go and watch it right now, because might have picked up on this already, but Alana did not win.
I did
not. And I will tell you, we showed one game. We recorded 5.
It was a long game.
4,
it was like
5,
5, 6, and 4. Like it was
a lot. And Alana was the game that we showed, I think, was the closest that Alana was to winning the game.
Like honestly, like the tragedy of that game was like, oh, there's a bunch of risk studies. I'm gonna take this turn to grasp of fate everything. On the turn that I was thinking about doing that, I drew Grasp of Fate for turn, and I'm just like, okay, like sure.
Yeah, now I guess I can pay mana for it. Exile all of these Ristic studies.
Yeah,
try
like
again.
It was the perfect window, honestly. Like everyone was tapped out. I'm only concerned about some free interaction, and it just happened to be a lot of free interaction, which is unfortunate. But it was a good window, and it just it's the double Shimmer effect is not a problem, but the problem is Zerg getting bounced, which was what happened that entire day. It was like it's like we know what Zerg does. We played in 2016. You don't get to trigger Zerg. We're Cobalt likes to say we're 0 with no other trigger gamers. We were 0 with 0 trigger gamers that day for the most part.
Yeah, exactly. So if you haven't watched the Masterpieces episode with Alana, Masterpieces episode 3, number 1, you definitely should. Because you won't understand a lick of this conversation if you haven't. But number 2, if you haven't, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a backdrop. In the game we had itself, Alana desperately tried to get out Zur and was successful. But by the time she got Zur out, 3 of us, the other 3 players in the game, all had Ristic studies, which is not exactly where you would like to be if you are trying to like combo off in your own end step. Not exactly ideal.
No, definitely not. I know a lot of people in that game said that like, oh, you should just get Ristic study there, and it's like, well, I just don't think I'm getting another turn there, right? Like if I don't feed them cards, Cal's gonna feed them cards, and then I'm just never getting back to my turn. And it made it like some chance I draw like all of my interaction in my deck. You know, when 10%, only 10% of your deck is interaction, you can't like just hope to get back to your turn.
Yeah, exactly. I think that is one of the interesting parts of a content and whatnot, is that the people watching do get perfect recall and have a bird's eye view of the game, and they can pause and they can rewind and they can sit there and think about it. But especially in the moment, it's just kind of like, all right, this is the best decision, I think, and I'm going to make it. And I think you made the best decision.
Like even though I don't get to trigger Grasp of Fate in later turn, I was like, okay, I'll just play. I play Grasp of Fate. I had plenty of mana, and then I get to exile 2 Ristics and Wandering, and everyone is tapped out. Like, who cares if they drop a bunch of cards? They don't have mana. Like, I should be able to fight that.
Exactly. All right. I'm going to bet that they're not going to find, like, exactly the pact of negation that, like, even if I had drawn a pact of negation, I don't think I could have, like, paid for it or whatever. So if I had, like, jammed it and stopped you, I just would have, like, lost in my upkeep, So
it's such a thing where, like, people don't understand windows, right? Like, if all of your opponents are tapped out, there's only so many cards in their decks that will, like, stomp you. Like, you have to weigh the odds of like, hey, this is my best chance.
Yep, exactly. So, by my recollection, in the turn you cast Grasp of Fate. This is kind of like the penultimate turn, right? This is the turn before I untapped and won.
Generally, I was hoping that Grasp of Fate was just would just get interacted with, eat all the interaction, and then I'm free to go because I hadn't found something. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna grasp everybody. They'll interact with that. They'll get counter whatever, and then I get to resolve silence. That's not how it went at all, but that was my hope.
Yeah, my recollection is that Grasp of Fate was interacted with, and then there was also a mental misstep for the
Yeah,
silence.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, something
So
like
then you
that.
said,
I think
yeah, something like that.
I don't remember exactly, but I know Mike had force negation, and then I think
Yeah,
I think even we learned later that Ryan still had like mind break trap or something, but
yeah.
it was just not working out for me.
Yeah, he trapped me on my turn.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was
so
like it was like your best window, but it was like a really really tiny
it
window.
was a tiny window, and it just didn't work out. Like, and I was never getting the turn in that game anyway, because like, but he just won right away. Like, you didn't even. I don't think you dropped too many cards off Crystal Study, but it was enough. So
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, exactly. It's hard to win the game when your opponents have 3 Ristic studies.
yeah, that's
Hard
very
to
hard.
hard to win the game when your opponents are um, removing your Sir all the time and all that kind of stuff. And that's actually kind of what I mainly wanted to talk to you about today. Yeah. YouTube commenters, shut up. Alana took her window when she had it and it didn't work out. I think that's kind of just CEDH for you, right?
It is like you like okay. I think my one's a quest here. I'm gonna take a chance. It doesn't work
Yep.
out sometimes, and then like you're like, oh well, that was wrong. It's like it doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yep.
It just didn't work out. Let's try.
But beyond Zur the Enchanter himself, if you look just like at a Zur deck list, it does just kind of look like a powerful pile of cards.
Yeah,
But
that's the thing. And like, so Drake has been messing with Sir as well, and he's like, well, what if I'm just like a good Esper deck? And then Zur is kind of like, okay, fine, you counter my Nas or whatever, and I just like, okay, I'm gonna cast Sir now and fall back on that. And like, I kind of liked the thesis of that, but then seeing him play it is just like, Nod without red just feels so bad, just so much worse. You can't like convert 2 mana to the dock side. You can't convert 2 mana into an extra turn. It's just a lot harder. Whereas like I was just telling him, I was like, okay, well we can tutor stuff out of our deck to Azure, which is great, but like what if we're just Tim to Malcolm and we just have like natural advantage from Malcolm? And like sure, Azure will discount Necro by 3 or whatever, but and tutor it, but what if we just kept a better generic hand and Malcolm like makes mana for whatever we want to do? Maybe like, we're focused around Shimmer, Necro stuff, but we don't like get a commander removed and are like very set back. Like that was my thing. He's still determined to make it work, I think, but I think if you are in Zur, you want protection effects. Probably not a lot of them. I think the changes that we can talk about I slotted in Lightning Greaves and Spellskite, which I think are probably 2 of the best ones. Spellskite is pretty hard to interact with, so I think that's kind of where you want to be. You want to like, turn 1, here's my protection effect, where's there, turn 2, here's my Zur. And if it's Lightning Greaves, then you get to impact the same turn, which is great, I think. So
yeah, I think good old Spellskite is a card that I'm personally very familiar with because putting Spellskite into Teamer Pirates raised my my win rate a non-zero amount because it turns out when you have a deck where you want creatures to live, Spellskite can
I think
really do the job.
I think these effects like Mother Runes, Spellskite, Sylvan Safekeeper, they're really good in these creature decks because like people run a limited amount of spot removal. And if you can blank one of those, it's really strong. Because you only have it's so quick. You have only so many resources to use. Like as soon as you blank one piece of removal, it's really good in those decks. I've seen Spellskite be so annoying and Teeter Malcolm. So
yeah, because you can redirect as many things as you want as long as you have the life for it or whatever. Not as many things as you want. Your Spellskite will usually be removed to anything that isn't a lightning bolt, I guess. Zur the Enchanter doesn't die to lightning bolt anyway.
Yeah, so there you go. Yeah, I think you probably don't want a lot of those effects because like redundancy of them is not that great. But I think at least the ability to find 1 or 2 early is really quite good. Because then if your hand is mana and protection effect, like you're really happy. Like
yeah, is the reason you specifically chose Spellskite and Lightning Greaves, is that just because they're artifacts and the deck is already pretty decent at finding artifacts because it kind of has to be? Or...
I mean, you have Black Tutors, so something about finding them. It's more so about the mana cost. 2 mana is like a very important threshold because of like, how the format is soul right and kind of trying like your ideal play pattern is something like land mana crypt talisman or like land soul ring talisman, and the same thing for lightning grazer spell sky, right? You're like, okay, I have a land, a soul ring, and then I can play my protection back to the next turn. I can, play my
Yeah, I guess like 2 colorless is way different than like a single white for
exactly.
mom or something like that.
And I think like mom could be good. Like maybe you want to run a third one. Maybe you want to run mom instead of the other ones. I just think that the 2 generic ones are a little bit better. I definitely think like mom could probably take the slot. You could probably run a third one too, honestly, if you really want to go hard on them.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Card Conduit. Do you have extra cards lying around that you don't use? Want to buy or trade for some extra cards but don't know how to maximize the value? Then you should try out Card Conduit. Card Conduit is the best service when it comes to selling your extra cards. Don't waste hours trying to find the best buy list price for your cards online. Simply send them to Card Conduit and let them take care of the rest. I've used Card Conduit multiple times already. I always use them to get the best value of my extra cards. I get fair prices for my cards and they save me tons of time. They have 3 main services. Their standard service lets you send them unsorted cards of any value. They will sort, grade, and give you the best buy list price for your cards. Their curated service is similar. Send them your unsorted cards worth over $1 in value. They will charge half of the fee of the standard service and charge no fee per card. Their new sorted service is a great value as well. Choose cards in advance with their selection tool, send them sorted to Card Conduit, and they will grade and buy list them automatically. Save yourself the time of having to send to multiple sites and let Card Conduit do it instead. Their fee is only 2% with no fee per card. They give you the best price for your cards. They work with competitive buy listing partners, including ones not open to the public. Users get an average of 19% more for their collection than they would have from a major retail buy list, even with Card Conduit's fees. Card Conduit also optimizes buy listing for card condition as well. Since vendors have different penalties for wear and tear, Card Conduit will find the best buy list price against the specific condition of a card. So give Card Conduit a try today. If you sign up with my link in the show notes or the description, or use the promo code POWER, you'll also get 10% off their fees when you use their service. A big thanks to Card Conduit for sponsoring today's podcast.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I want to take a little bit a step back here and say that, so what we're doing here is like something that you maybe learned from our Masterpieces recordings and maybe playing Zur the Enchanter elsewhere, is that like what happened over and over again was like you went all in on Zur. Like, a lot of times if you keep a Zur hand, especially since Jeweled Lotus only pays for like 2 of your 3 mana, right? You're kind of all in on casting Zur, and like that's what the hand does. And so, and then if someone removes it, you're kind of like blown out, and you're trying to like, what if we mitigate that a little bit? Is that the thought?
That's basically the thought, because there were so many times that day. It's like where like my hand was like, okay, your hand just makes mana for Zur, and it's like it was like they're not like our kind of hand, so it's like, do I really want to mulligan? Because then
I guess I'll keep it.
Yeah, I guess I'll keep it and try it, and then it's like, well, you get blown out, and like that happens, but it feels bad when like you can't really recover, because like you didn't keep mana plus payoff, and the lower you mull, the harder it is to keep mana plus payoff. So like it's much easier to like maybe you're supposed to play in as, and you only keep those only mana hands when you're mulliganing lower. But like the hands that were like all in on Zur were pretty good. They're just missing like that one like counter spell or that one like protection piece.
Yeah, because it is kind of weird, because like there's a lot of decks in which like the mana isn't the payoff, but it is kind of weird because like in the deck, especially the build that you brought for a recording, like Zur is kind of the payoff, but if you don't have the protection for Zur, you'll just lose.
Yeah, it's asking a lot, right? Like you want mana and payoff and protection, which is kind of how like you play a deck like Rocksky. So you're mulliganing very aggressively. Whereas like my hope with this deck was I could mulligan less aggressively, like just need mana protection.
Yeah, just like you need mana, you need protection, because you just need to cast your commander. If you untap with your commander, you in theory win the game.
Yeah.
And then since that's your only goal, you don't have to go as low on cards, and then you'll have more cards in hand, which is just always better than having less cards in hand.
Like,
exactly.
That was my hope, and like it didn't quite work out that way. So I think an extra density of protection effects is because I would always like get the mana. I'd be like, okay, I can cast around 2. Don't have protection though. So like, I don't know what to do.
For sure.
Hands that have like mana protection payoff are like very rare. And then like, even the hands that have enough mana, because of how awkward there is to cast with the 3 colored pips, it's a little hard. I think the signets actually help, and I've been talking to this like with other people, and some friends have been mentioning this lately. If you're like already on the talisman, you know, City of Traders Ancient plan,
maybe even
the
signets.
Signets are actually kind of good for 3 mana pipped commanders, because like a land plus the signet, if they're different colors, will cast
that
your
kind of gets you.
commander
Yeah,
on
you
turn
just
2.
get there.
So
Yeah,
it kind of fixes for the pips.
Yeah.
Which has been very interesting. Obviously, they're worse like on the same turn because, you know, you need a mana
you
to
need
activate
that
them.
initial mana.
But it's like your goal, like Dahada, for existence. Same casting costs, there are just different colors. It's really nice because you're like, okay, I land Chrome Mox, whatever, and then a Signet, and then you pass, and then you're guaranteed on turn 2. You're like, I'm passing my commander. Whereas, like, if you're like, you know, land Mox Talisman, you're like, well, maybe my Mox doesn't make the right color.
Yeah.
It makes the same color as my Talisman. I only have 2 colors now. My land makes like a similar color. It's kind of interesting, honestly.
The signets require definitely a little bit more of an investment, but the investment is colorless mana, which like we've already alluded to, and like I've written about recently, is kind of actually a dime a dozen in CEDH.
Yeah, I thought like that. Yeah. I think that's why like this a little bit of a tangent, but I think that's why the One Ring is pretty good.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
That's
why I wrote about this concept recently. Was writing about the One Ring. Yeah, exactly.
Like, here's a pile of 4 colors that I'm like, sure.
It's like what. And I don't have signets in my deck, so what am I supposed to do with it? I have all these colored costs.
Yeah, so I think I put some signets into Hada. The signets were always in Zur, so I mean that was always helpful. Like I think I had one of them in our game in Masterpieces, and it was very helpful. Like color fixed greatly for me.
Is it just always like signets and talismans? Is that kind of?
I don't know. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it depends on what you're trying to do. I've been really buying into this like mana advantage from the command zone more so lately than like card advantage.
Yeah,
because like
big Malcolm fan.
Yeah. Like you always have cards for the most part, unless you've like mulled into Oblivion. But making mana to cast their spells can be a lot harder. Yeah. Which is why I've been really enjoying Rog and Dahada for the past, year or whatever.
Yeah, because they just give you a lot of mana, incidentally.
A lot of mana. And I think that's very strong. And it's actually very rare. Like, there's actually not that many commanders that have, like, just innate mana advantage.
Like, I think that is kind of funny. The funny thing about, I know I keep talking about Malcolm, but I think that is kind of the thing about Malcolm is like, if you just like looked at Malcolm, like if you looked at, like Malcolm Timna, the deck, right? The Esper deck that you said maybe you should just be playing instead of Malcolm. People call the deck Mauling for Malcolm because you just want to cast Malcolm on turn 1. But if you're not like very super experienced with CEDH or whatever, or even if you just like look at the card, you're like, I can make a Lotus Petal every turn. That's like okay, I guess. But then when it actually plays out,
it's very strong. Like
great,
there's so many pivotal turns in CEDH where you're like, oh, if I had one more mana, if I had a different color of mana, like I win there, right? And like it was like Malcolm does that for you. It's it's like deceptively strong. And then there's other commanders that do things like that. It's just, and it's a lot more rare. Like me, like that's why Lotho kind of just segue into the new cards. It's just I saw that card and I was like, this card's good. This card's so good. Like it makes me a treasure. Like every time someone casts a second spell, like that's insane. Like, I know people they cast it on. I've seen them cast it on 1. It gets back to their turn. They have like 8 mana. They make 4 treasures off of it. And I'm just like, that should just win you the game. Honestly, most of the time.
Exactly. So zooming out a little bit again, like when it came to Masterpieces, if you watch the episode, Alana kind of had 2 overarching things, and being there for the recording too. Number 1, her Zur was getting removed all the time. Number 2, we've recorded this a while ago. The Masterpieces episodes, they take a while to edit. We have big schedules. We have tough schedules. Alana, drove in. So, we have to coordinate them and we got to fit them in when we can. And we recorded this one probably a month and a half ago, like at this time, if not longer ago than that.
Yeah. I think it was like a week, 2 weeks after recorded, they spoiled some of the Lord of the Rings cards.
Exactly.
And I was just like, you have to be kidding me.
Yeah, like your second biggest problem at this Masterpieces recording, besides us removing your Zur all the time, was that Lord of the Rings hadn't been released yet because number one, like you said, Lotho was in there, and number two, Alana, tell us about the one deck that probably actually wanted us to play the card Borne Upon the Wind.
Born Upon the Wind. I don't think the card is that good. However, if you're shimmering, it's a card you want. It condenses so many of your slots. Because I was running things like Quicken, Scout's Warning, I still have Shallow Grade and Tomb the List because I think it's cute with Labman Oracle, stuff like that. But it just condenses so many of these slots into one and gives you a redundant shimmer effect that's only 2 mana. And it draws a card. It's just the best shimmer effect that's ever been printed for.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say, it costs blue, but it only costs 2 instead of 3, and it gives all of your spells flash, not just your artifact spells like Shimmer Mirror, or not just your colorless and artifact spells like Liberator. It just gives all of your spells flash. You can just
start casting your whole hand with this. It's just the best.
Flashing your Docksided instant speed.
Oh gosh, I wish.
It's a phantasmal image because your opponents have a Dockside in play and didn't win somehow. Yeah, exactly.
Somehow.
Living the dream as I understand it.
Red is the dream right now.
Just kidding. I have the list in front of me right now, and there's no phantasmal image in here. I think you could put it.
I think we could find room for it. I just don't think it's pivotal to the strategy. There's always those 8 cards, last cards in CEDH.
Yeah, exactly.
Play whatever you want. It doesn't matter too much.
So I was looking at your list and you cut Quicken in the list you played to Masterpieces compared to this kind of idealized list, or maybe what you would play if you played today. I saw you cut Quicken, you cut Aetherflux Reservoir and Retract, like you already alluded to put in Lightning Greaves, Spellskite, Borne Upon a Wind, and Lotho. Obviously, Borne Upon a Wind and Lotho probably could have done some great work for you, because going from 2 to 3 shimmer effects seems pretty good.
Trinity is great, and Borne is great because it allows all of these sorcery spells without Quicken is just 1, right? So you just I'm gonna cast all these sorcery things like Demonic Tutor is a very one. The other thing is that Lotho, if it's much easier to cast Lotho on turn 1, and then generally if you casted Lotho on 1, you can probably cast there on 2 with Lotho.
Yeah, and have
it just
extra
condenses your hand immensely.
Yeah, and you just have extra mana left over too to cast your non-free counter spells or whatever.
Yeah, you're just I have an extra treasure. Here's my Swan Song. It's actually, the card is just kind of insane. Maybe I'll be proven wrong in the future, and it's not as insane as I think it is. But I think the card is good. Making mana is just very strong.
I think right the card is. I also think it's very strong. I have seen it in a lot of CEDH games already in the 2 or so weeks or 3 weeks that people have been messing around with it. And it's just man, makes me think more about how many cards people are drawn off of Crom. I'm wait a second, that guy has 4 treasures in play. How many cards did that guy draw off of Crom? That's crazy. That's crazy.
I think it's better. I would rather make a treasure off Crom. This is the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there was a game. I had some of my local friends over the other night. We were playing, and I was playing Dahada, and I had Lotho up on, I think it was from 1 to 2, something like that. And the board got locked with a Deafening Silence and Archon of Omeria. And before it got locked, Lotho made me 10 treasures. It was insane. And so the moment that the Archon got revealed, people were casting creatures again, so I was still getting Lotho triggers. I'm just sitting here waiting. And by the time I was able to remove both stats pieces, I think I had 25 available mana. It was insane. Constant
exactly.
Lotho triggers.
That's just egregious amounts of mana.
Yeah, it just allowed I could cast my whole hand. It was just not okay. I think the card is quite good. I would argue that you should just kill it or just not feed it most of the time, because Ronsai and Dahada are just 2 of the fastest and 2 of the strongest decks in meta right now, in my opinion. They're so good because of their mana advantage, and this card is very, very good. I think it gives black-white decks a very strong tool to explode early on.
I just checked my TCG player order history, #sponsored. And I did buy a Lotho. I couldn't remember if I had picked one up or not yet. I am, as a guy who rarely plays white and black decks, I picked up my Lotho, and it has not come in the mail yet, but we'll see when it shows up.
I desperately wish I could play it in Roxai. I think Team Kenny gets to enjoy it heavily. That deck, as good as the deck is, has struggled with like cleric mana. So
yeah, that's actually a very interesting point. It's like it's a deck that can draw all the cards in the world in between like Timna and Crom, but like the way it gets mana is it just like actually casts Dockside.
Yep.
Like that's actually where it gets this mana from or whatever. So that seems really good for TNK.
I think it's I think you'll also find it very. I mean, it definitely will always be in the deck in 5 colors to say. 5 colors to say just wants to say and like 5 mana. And Lotho,
it seems fine.
Also very good warrior.
Lotho will fix your mana so well. And creature. It pumps her up. Just going like, are you just like supposed to tutor that out every time?
Probably because like low cost black legendary creatures were not much of a thing in SSA. If I remember right, there was only like 1 or 2. I think I ran Valky sometimes, but it wasn't that good. Sissay has actually gotten a lot of pickups lately, but Lotho is definitely the best one probably.
I was about to say, I know that a lot of Sissay players I know that would go like their 2-drop counter was like pretty much always Catilda, because Catilda kind of fixed your mana in the same way because it made all your legendary creatures into Birds of Paradises, and that fixes your mana in your own way. But Lotho seems a little bit better than that. I'm not gonna lie.
Insane. Like it's even insane the fact that like maybe you already are holding up some amount of mana and then you can get like 2 Lotho triggers over 2 turns and then you're like, oh, I just have enough to activate. Now I'm gonna win on top of you. Like,
yeah, exactly. So we've talked about Lotho, we've talked about Borne Upon a Wind, we've talked about why you would include Lightning Greaves and Spellskite now, and I was looking here, and there are 2 cards. This list is 6 cards different, which in the grand scheme of thing isn't.
Yeah, it's not
that. It's not that different, but also when we're talking about like CEDH Esper piles, that is a decent amount of cards to change.
Yeah.
And the last 2 cards are Nexus of Fate and Laboratory Maniac. Why are these making the cut, Alana? Laboratory Maniac?
Yeah.
I thought we left that in 2015. Nexus of Fate? What is this? A broken standard format?
I think that you could probably swap Laboratory Maniac and Aetherflux. Like,
yeah, for sure.
I think they're
kind of like interchangeable win cons.
They're a little interchangeable. The fact that Aetherflux is just kind of clunky, and sometimes you need, if you don't have enough stuff to cast and hold priority, you can't get to that magical, 151 life mark. It's really awkward. And so Drake has been testing this thing where he's like, okay, I'm just going to get to 7 mana and I'm going to cast Nexus of Fate and I'm going to go to another turn. And I'm like, that sounds way better. That I would much rather be doing that. Like, and Nexus of Fate, I can like, very niche, like prevents you getting from milled. I don't think that's that important. But you can like, you could just hold up 7 mana and you're like, oh, I'm just taking an extra turn right here. It's the Final Fortune thing, right? Except it doesn't kill you. I think so. I think it's really interesting, actually. Like, you're just like, okay, I'm just going to ritual, make some mana, cast Nexus Fate, go to my next turn, win. Like, because then it's almost a redundant Shimmer effect, right? Because you're like, I'm just going to go to my next turn where I can actually cast sorceries and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense to me. How do you actually win the game with Laboratory Maniac? How are we getting rid of our library in our little? Is it actually just? Yeah, is it just like you're just trying to like cast Demonic Consultation or whatever, and then
just draw a card.
And then
Borne Upon a Wind did connect the slot.
Yeah, Borne. I forget Borne. I keep forgetting that Borne Upon a Wind randomly cantrips. Yeah. That seems fine.
Yeah, so you can use Borne to draw it. Use Scout's Warning is still in the back, so you can use that to draw it. You'll want another redundant draw effect, but it's yet to be seen. It's basically just like Aetherflux is clunky. Let's just have a redundant Oracle effect. Yeah. I mean, Trader's Scraps is still in the deck. Nomic Trail is still in the deck. There's plenty of ways to still.
Yeah, there's a lot of because you're just like an Esper pile. You can do the Esper stuff without having to do the Necropotence win it instant speed on your instep stuff. Like you don't have to do that.
It's basically a redundant Fossils Oracle, right? Like
that makes a lot of sense. You have
Trader's Grasp as well, so it's not 100% needed. I don't even know if you need to run it, but So funny anecdote. Drake was playing Berserk the other day, and I was watching while I had some free time. And he had a win on board with Laboratory Maniac, Sensei's Divining Top, Demonic Consultation in hand, and Pact of Negation in hand. But there was a Notion Thief out. It was just like, we're gonna throw Drake under the bus a little bit here. Don't worry, it'll be fine. He forgot that they're both replacement effects. So he could just choose the lab band over the Notion Thief and still win on the spot. So he was just sitting there, and it was tight.
That is very funny. Look,
He's like,
the rules.
That's never come up for me. I feel like, yeah.
The rules of Magic the Gathering is very hard.
They are. I've made plenty of my own silly puns. So,
yep, that makes a lot of sense to me. Well, Alana, I appreciate you talking to me about this today. Do you have any more closing thoughts about Zur the Enchanter in CDH, or maybe whether or not people should just be playing Mulling for Malcolm? Or
I think if you actually want to seriously play Shimmer, you should probably just play Malcolm Timna Shimmer, like with a Shimmer focus. However, I don't think, I think I was maybe a little harsh on Zur at the end. If you just have maybe kind of reach in for a little bit of protection effects, I think it can be very strong, because if you trigger Zur, it is hilariously consistent how much
you just kind of like will win the game.
You just kind of win. So I think if you can be more seriously protective of Zur, it might still actually be worth it, because the effect is very powerful, which is the whole reason I want to play it in the first place. It's just that the whole like play my commander wait a turn thing is very dangerous with how fast the format is right now. I think that's my takeaway, and I think just Malcolm Timna more generically good.
Yeah, make mana, draw cards.
Make
seems
mana,
good to
draw
me.
cards. Yeah, again, mana. I think a mana advantage is very important, and I think that is very strong. Now, those would be my two takeaways for CEDH now. Mana good, red good.
I do recall that being your main takeaway at the end of the episode. I missed Dockside.
Yeah, I was like, I missed Dockside. Like, the card is stupid. Like, I don't know why. You would have to give me a very good reason to stop play red right now. So.
All right. Well, Alana, thank you for joining us for Masterpieces Episode 3. Thank you for joining us on the Playing with Power team.
Yeah, well,
and of course, thank you for joining me on this yet to be named Masterpieces. We say the word retrospective all the time. We got to get a new word we got to get a new snappier word on the Playing with Power podcast.
We'll come up with something.
Exactly. I'll put you on the case. So I just this has been crooked the entire time. Embarrassing for everyone. Embarrassing for all of us.
For you, honestly.
All right. Thank you, Alana.
Always a joy, God.
Thank you so much to Alana for joining me on our very first episode of Grapple with the Past. Make sure to give the Playing with Power podcast a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast aggregator. You'd be surprised how much it helps. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and more. All links are in the episode notes. And of course, that wraps it up for this episode of the podcast. Tune in next time when we talk more about our favorite format and our favorite game, Magic the Gathering. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and we will see you next time.